and cross-check.
Come fly the red eye.
Welcome aboard the Red Eye.
April 2nd, 2026. Well, happy springtime, everyone. And aren't we all just a tiny bit thrilled to see the back of winter? Kind of. I mean, I know I can't complain too loudly. I do get the occasional splash of winter sunshine. But honestly, even I was starting to wilt. Those long nights and frosty mornings were dragging on like the breakfast service. And don't get me started on the relentless rain. I was beginning to consider building an ark. But here we are at last, tiptoeing through the tulips again with that lovely reawakened spring optimism nudging us forward. There is something about lighter evenings and the faint smell of cut grass that makes everything feel possible again, don't you think? For this month's blog, once again I had to sit down and have a flick through my diary to remind myself what on earth I'd actually been up to. The thing is, as crew, we tend to treat each trip as its own self-contained universe. We meet our colleagues in the pre-flight briefing, and then we form, storm, and norm, as they say, before stepping on board. We operate out, live a whole miniature lifetime down route, and then operate back home again. Back at base, it's usually dash off the aircraft and a quick goodbye to some see you soon to others, and occasionally a vague wave to someone whose name you have completely blanked on despite spending 48 hours together. I have heard that some couples who get together on their trip have what they call the Heathrow divorce. Anyway, by the time our head hits the pillow for that sacred post-flight nap, the entire trip has already started to blur. Where were we? Who were we with? Did that actually happen, or did I dream it somewhere over the Bay of Biscay? And so, I have to admit, I do rather enjoy writing this blog. It forces me to wake up the old grey matter and pin down memories that, in a few months' time, I would probably be trying to place. And in March, as I now remember, I took Mother away. After firmly declaring, following last month's debacle with the kids in South Africa, that I would never take anyone away ever again, along comes Mother's Day on a weekend. I happen to be rostered for a flight. The universe clearly has a sense of humour. Mother, of course, was not remotely discouraged by my hesitation. She has clocked up a respectable number of air miles in retirement and considers herself something of a professional passenger. And seeing as I am an only child with absolutely no siblings to gently pass her towards, I let her talk me into tagging along on my one-night New York. And I have to admit, it was rather lovely. We strolled along the High Line to get coffee in Chelsea, shopped with the stamina of trained athletes, and wandered through the library in Bryant Park. Mother has been several times before, so there was no need for me to don the tour guide hat and start reeling off facts. We simply pottered at her pace, and it was easy. The only slight drawback was the hotel room, which can be best described as cosy, if one is feeling generous. Sharing a bed with a 75-year-old woman who snores with the force of a freight train is, I can confirm, mildly draining. But truly, I can't complain. Not everyone gets to roll their eyes at their mother in Times Square when she makes you take the 100th picture of her for her friends at home, do they? But for all the sights and the bonding, do you know what her favourite part of the trip was? Meeting the crew in the Irish bar at the end of the day. Oh, she was in her element. Absolute element. Perched there with a glass of wine in hand, soaking up the gossip like it was a West End performance staged purely for her benefit. And the crew did not hold back. Despite my dramatic facial expressions, my eyes wide, my subtle kicks under the table, and my repeated reminders that my mother was present, one particular crew member seemed entirely committed to corrupting the old girl. They launched headfirst into the most outrageous recent Galley FM stories I've heard in years, with zero filters applied. And I sat there, in mild horror, while Mother listened with undisguised delight. Imagine watching your 75-year-old mother lean in and ask for clarification when the girl explains that a uniformed pilot had been posting pictures of his appendage at various locations on and around the aircraft to an anonymous X account. According to the storyteller, he had been remarkably relaxed about identifying the airline, yet despite a full-scale internal investigation, they had so far been able to work out whose wanger it was. So apparently, he is still out there. And I swear by the look on Mother's face, she went straight home and looked him up. Not that she'd ever admit it to me, and frankly, I'd rather she didn't. And then, somehow, it got worse. But before I continue, I do need to clarify that Galley FM is not an actual radio station. It is our affectionate name for the rumour mill, or croomers, as we call them. It is the frequency we all tune into when the gossip starts flowing on the jump seat. It is where the juiciest stories are aired and consumed with a very generous pinch of salt, and despite the conviction some storytellers have, nothing is verified. But the crew member telling these stories apparently has a friend in the office at the other airline and was adamant that every word was true, telling them with the confidence of someone who had read the incident report. And the next one she told went something like this. At that same airline, which shall very firmly remain nameless, a male captain and a female first officer were allegedly having an affair. They had carefully requested the same flight and, somewhere en route, decided to make rather enthusiastic use of their time together in the cockpit. I will admit, at this point, I assumed we were heading for a fairly standard Mile High Club revelation. Shocking enough, and awkward enough in front of Mother. But no. Apparently, these two were aiming for something a little more, advanced. According to Galley FM, at some point, an access request was inadvertently granted by the lady in question during what can only be described as a lapse in judgment. An unsuspecting crew member opened the cockpit door to discover the captain completely naked and tied up using the flight deck escape rope. Yes, that rope. The 63-foot knotted rope intended for evacuating through the flight deck window in an emergency. The rope that features prominently in safety drills and absolutely nowhere in the operations manual under recreational uses. And yet there it was, allegedly wrapped around him like a boa constrictor. I mean, you couldn't truly make this up. Is it true? Well, she swore it was. And if it is, I would give anything to have witnessed the management meeting that followed. We were just practicing evacuation procedures. It was a very hands-on safety drill. Well, my shirt just fell off. The rope attacked me. If ever there was a moment to be a fly on the wall, that would absolutely be it. And Mother? Well, her I never had a distinctly theatrical quality to it. There was a faraway look in her eye that suggested she wasn't nearly as scandalised as she was pretending to be, and I have to say, I'm slightly concerned for Dad when she gets home. He may find himself subjected to a sudden and entirely unexplained interest in nautical knots. Well, where do I go from there? After all of that, everything else from the month feels rather mundane and frankly unworthy of retelling now. Minor delays, running out of chicken, the usual airborne dramas. Nothing quite competes with the phantom appendage poster or the rope-bound captain. So this is probably a good place to end. And I shall leave you with those images, my little gift to you, and hope they have provided at least a smirk, if not a full laugh. As for me, I'm off now to take Mother to the garden centre. We will be purchasing a cup of tea and a respectable slice of cake and discussing nothing more risque than Mrs. Goodwin's petunias. No doubt she'll think this is a little dull after her New York gossip, but I do feel it is important to draw a line occasionally and gently reinstate our roles. And besides, Galley FM has absolutely no place between the begonias and the bird feeders. Much love, Susan. The Red Eye podcast is written by Kaylee Kay, narrated and produced by me, Ali Murphy. These stories are based on true events, but certain details, characters, and timelines have been altered to protect the innocent. Visit our website, theredeyepod.com, to subscribe to our newsletter and to find out details on how you can contribute your story for us to turn into an episode. If you enjoyed listening to our stories, please like, subscribe, and review. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Red Eye podcast. You guys are why we do this. We love the stories that you have, and we love telling you the stories that people share with us. To help us reach more people and get the podcast really out there, we would really appreciate it if you left a review. It just helps our podcast be a little bit more visible. Thank you.